joins us, so we're ready to go.
We have a quorum, Denise?
Yes, we do have a quorum. Let's see, I lost everybody. Where am I at? Have a quorum. Yes, we have a quorum. But this is the YouTube channel.
See, I lost everybody. Where am I at?
Man.
Have a
So do we have everybody? Hi, Amanda.
Sorry, I needed to unmute. How are you?
Good, how are you?
Good.
See, we have Jeffrey. We don't have Dave.
There you go. Can you hear me, Denise?
Yep, I can, Jeff.
Perfect.
How are you?
Great.
Good. I think all we're waiting on, Mayor, is Dave.
Hey, Jeffrey, what does that shirt say?
Nothing.
Braves?
I just came from a North Summit Braves soccer game, and we didn't do very well.
Oh, Dave's here. I didn't see him, but he's here.
Okay,
Hello.
Okay, Mayor.
ready? Okay. I'd like to call this Warren City Council meeting to order. It is September 22nd, 6 o'clock, and we'd like to first off ask Tony London if he would lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance, and allow David if he'd offer us to open the ceremony.
Yes, if you all could please stand. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, a nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Father in heaven, we gather before thee as we begin our Morgan City Council meeting, thankful for the opportunity we have to come together. We're thankful for this wonderful valley that we inherit. We pray for leaders of our nations, inasmuch as we're experiencing a pandemic. We ask that they may make decisions that would help limit and control the spread of the virus. We pray that the virus may be tempered. We pray for peace. Help us now as we consider the affairs of the council meeting, that we might understand the concepts. In the name of Jesus Christ, amen.
Thank you, Tony, and thank you, Dave. Appreciate that, your involvement there. Welcome to all those who joined us this evening. First off, we'd like to ask the council for an approval on the city council meetings of August 25th and the one set of warrants. Dave, you're on mute.
Here we go. Mayor, I'd move to approve the meeting minutes of August 25th and the set of warrants. I reviewed them and they look proper.
Is
I'll
there-
second that, Mayor.
Yeah, also, okay.
Okay, motion by David, second by Tony, that we accept and pass the one set of minutes of August 25th and one set of warrants. there any discussion on the motion? Okay, seeing none, we'll proceed to vote. All those in favor, raise your hand so I can see. Vote, okay. Denise was 3 affirmative, so motion passed unanimously. Appreciate that. Okay, next item. Amanda. Appreciate you being here. Are you going to explain and offer to us the invitation from the Governing Youth Council?
I
Okay,
sure am.
okay, you're on then, Amanda.
Okay, thanks. I just got a text from Annalise Rudd. She was going to be here with me tonight, but she's running a little behind. But I just wanted to let you guys know that we are inviting you to the GYC open house that's coming up. Usually every year we do a legislative dinner where we invite all of our local leaders to the health department. And then we just educate them on, the issues that our teens want to address. This year, our theme is going to be stay positive and stay safe. So we wanted to invite you all to come. It's going to be on Thursday, October 8th from 5:30 to 7 o'clock at the Weber Morgan Health Department, just in the parking lot. So it will be outside. We invite you plus one other, so you could bring your spouse with you. You're invited to come and learn about these teen issues. We'll also be have catering done by Waffle Love, which I've heard it's awesome. We will require masks, and there will be strict social distancing guidelines. And we're going to have some booths that the teens will lead, and they'll just let you know stuff that we're planning on doing to help the youth in our communities. We used to just focus on on tobacco prevention, but now we're addressing a lot of different topics, such as mental health, alcohol, drugs, all that type of stuff. So we're just trying to help the youth in our communities and make a difference. So we'd love to have you come. We just ask that you RSVP so we have plenty of food for everyone. And so we hope you can join us. I know the mayor's attended several of our legislative dinners, so they're really fun. It's a great time to mingle with the kids.
Man, maybe you could explain a little bit about the Governing Youth Council, who they are and how they're selected, the function they perform for us.
Yeah. So we invite the youth to apply to be part of the GYC, and really we try to teach them advocacy skills and help them to be leaders. And then we work, they decide what they want to work on that year and what the issues are in their schools. And then we try to do lunchtime activities. Every year we always take a group of kids to the Capitol, and then they get to, learn about what's going on, how laws are made, and the bills are passed. And so it's really great experience for them. And then they get to, work with other kids from other schools. So it's a really great experience.
Yes, as Amanda mentioned, I've been in other years and attended those, and it's impressive how the youth are able to go back in their schools and help promote some of the concepts that they come up with and feel are important for our day.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Amanda. Appreciate it. Any questions, Tony or Dave?
Yeah, Mayor,
Yes.
does Amanda, do you have like a flyer or something that you could email to us, or?
Oh, I sure do. I actually put some in all of your boxes.
There's one in your
Individual invitation.
Also, there's one in your packets.
Yeah, in your packet.
Okay, all right, okay.
Yeah.
Yes, Jeffrey.
And we appreciate all that you do. Thanks for all you do. And really our theme this year is really just to stay positive and stay safe. So that's really what we're going to address. And the kids will pick. I think there's, that's really important for all of us to, stay positive, work together, and help our communities, work together on all this stuff. Cause this year's been hard on everybody. Right. And so if we can all come together and stay positive and work together, I think it can get better.
Amanda, how many youth do you typically involve?
Well, this year we've actually invited some of our CTCs, that's communities that care, but we have, let's see, we need to recruit some more. It's been hard to recruit kids. So we have probably, from each of the high schools, 5 or 6 kids. So it just kind of depends. Mm-hmm. So we lost a lot of our Morgan kids last year because a lot of them graduated. So we really need to beef that up a little bit. But we have some from, the other high schools in Weber County. So, but I think when we go to the Capitol, we take quite a few kids, like 30 kids. So
good.
on a bus down to the Capitol. So
That's a
so
good group.
if you know of any youth that would like to, please encourage them to join us. So
Yeah, great. Thanks for the invitation.
yeah, thank you.
Anything else from the council? Okay, thank you, man. Thank you very much. And the council, if you can work in your schedule, please respond back to him by email. Okay, thank you, Amanda. Appreciate that. Okay, next item on the agenda is a proclamation. Again, it's in your packet and you've read that. Everyone here is aware of the winds we had and that hurricane wind force we had come through. Ty's done some work with the state and seeing where the state's at with that. And by state code, and Gary assisted as well as putting this together, Denise gave us the work through the form as well. So the combination of Ty and Gary and with Denise's help, we put together this proclamation. What it does, it allows us to then track our costs and expenses for cleanup after the windstorm and then be able to apply the state for some assistance with those. That's kind of what that is. As you've read through that, do you have any questions on that, the council?
Just to correct, Mayor, on the very last page, the certificate of passage and effective date, either Denise is working at a part-time job or we need to correct the word Centerville to Morgan.
Sorry, I forgot.
Oh,
Now you know where I got it from.
Either municipal recorder or Centerville. I just wondered if maybe you were doing something on the side.
Well,
okay.
thanks for catching that.
Yes, thank you, David. Any other questions or thoughts on the proclamation?
So you've signed it. It's already done and recorded and official.
That is correct, yes.
Good.
So this is more information item tonight. Don't necessarily need to vote on it. It's an information item. If you have any questions or input
Yeah.
for.
Good
Yes,
news.
go ahead.
Are city employees back to where they can breathe and do their job? Are we on top of everything? Power's where we need it. The transfer stations back functioning as garbage as well as trees?
Yeah,
Oh,
so
I respond to that.
yeah, so we've got most of our facilities cleaned up. So the park cemeteries have both been cleaned up. We still have some work at the cemetery to get the headstones back where they belong. And the transfer station's back on its normal hours with Robinson running the operation now. So our guys have been able to pull out of that activity, but the pile that's there has all been chipped and off to the side. So next step was we're going to have that pile hauled off. And then for this week, we just have green waste is still free. Just kind of gauging how many people still have, there's still some piles around town, but the demand is a lot less. So we're just going to kind of see how this week goes with the normal hours. But yeah, a couple of our guys have been able to take a day off. Sunday was the first day off for a handful of them. So anyway, took all hands on deck, and it was a good effort by everybody. We still have power line up to the TV station to rebuild, but the TV station or the TV tower's been destroyed. And so we're just kind of waiting for the word from the county when that's going to get rebuilt before we work on the power line situation, but almost back to normal.
All the substations are back up and going then?
Yep.
Hi, okay. Tony?
I was just gonna say, Ty, is there any source of funding that you can apply for to help with this as far as money is concerned, or grants?
So, yeah, so that's what the declaration does. So that's the state declared a state of emergency and they have to meet a state threshold to qualify. So right now, FEMA is just starting what they call the preliminary damage assessment to see if there's enough qualified expenses and damages. And I've run our numbers where we're at so far, and we've already met our county's threshold, just the city by itself, because it's kind of based on population. And so if the state gets approved, most of the work that we've done would get reimbursed at 75%. And then we can use volunteer hours for our 25% match. So the more volunteer hours that is eligible activity. So it can't be volunteer hours to clean up their own properties. That has to be volunteer hours to either clean up the right of way, the park strip, or the road, or some public facility. We did have a group help us at the park. Anyway, those hours would count towards the match. So whatever we claim there can get us reimbursed for. It won't be everything, it'll just be eligible expenses, but the vast majority of it, I hope we can get reimbursed for.
Anything else from council on that one?
Tony was talking here.
I said we were renting the tub grinder. Is that correct, Ty? We were releasing the tub grinder down at the landfill.
Yeah, so the county contracted with Dan Wilkinson
Mhm.
to grind that up. So it's a grinder on the end of a excavator. So we just tore through it in place, and then we had to pile it with our loader.
That big pile of trees has been ground up already?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Really?
What Dan's got, he's got a big machine, what that's made for purposes to go up on the range ground, mountain ground. He can walk through a grove of oak brush or a grove of quakies and just grind it down, right down to small chips in the ground. It opens up range ground for grazing. That's what the machine is. You took that machine, just walked into the pile, and as he walked in, it just ground it up. So it's not like a grinder. It's not fine like a grinder. They're still bigger pieces, but they're manageable.
It shoots them all over the place. So they have to grind it. They've done it on Sunday and when it's closed, because it just shreds. Like Lance has a little video and he's hiding behind the little outpost building as cover while they operate that thing. So yeah, it moved through that pile pretty. They did it twice, the whole pile a couple of times to get it smaller, but it's all ground now. So
Ty, do you have yet an aggregate of the total additional expense that we would have sustained because of the wind?
So we're just over 60,000 right now of actual costs. And so that doesn't include, we had Brigham City's crew here for four days, and it doesn't include the power poles that we purchased, the wire that we had to buy. And then whatever, we haven't assessed like any value to damage as far as like what it's going to take to put the cemetery back together and fencing and that sort of thing. So we're, and we still have about 6 or 8 trees in the river. So that's something we're gonna be working on next with the county. So, but anyway, that's about where we're at dollar wise. Is about, it was 58, about 58,300 when I looked at the
And rising.
equipment.
Yeah, the trees in the river came up like yesterday in COG meeting with the county. That was discussed a little bit in COG meeting, so.
Yeah, so if this disaster gets approved, and if we can find that out, it makes sense to contract some of that work, because that gets reimbursed at 100%. if we do the work ourselves, it's 75-25. And we don't necessarily have the right equipment to be able to get those trees out of the river to begin with. So we, where it's not high water right now, we have some time to kind of make our best approach on how we want to do that. But hopefully we'll know where we're at on the declaration by the time we get somebody to help us with that.
Probably have to get an excavator in there, wouldn't we, or some sort, I would think. Yeah,
Big track hoe can do, but it's gotta be bigger than the county one.
yeah.
Okay, anything else on that? All right, we'll move to the next item. Item number 4 on your agenda, public comments. Denise is gonna read one. Denise, would you take a minute and explain where that came from and read that public comment to us for us, please?
Yes, Pam Turner submitted this yesterday and she was going to attend the meeting. Today, she requested that I just read it in for you guys. So her comment is on 100 North Street in Morgan. It's been under construction since June. This is almost the end of September. Several weeks, no work at all was performed towards completing the job. Ty told me that they plan only to spot repair the road when it is finished. Ty said that the road isn't scheduled to be redone for 2 years. Considering the amount of repairs to be done, it seems a waste of money to repair a road badly damaged when it is scheduled to be replaced in just 2 years. Money-wise, it would make more sense to repave the entire road than to pay the cost when it will be replaced in 2 years. He also said that the decision was made to use the city's workmen to do the connections. If the city hired these men for full-time positions, it was a great imposition to place a construction job on top of the work they were already hired to do. I would assume that it was why the city ignored our torn-up road for several weeks. I would suggest that better organization, planning for road repairs needs to be done in the future. I've had a hole on one side of my driveway and a lake on the other for a good portion of the summer. Your insurance company would not have been pleased with the holes that have been left. I would be happy to assist as I can get this job completed. I have talked with the mayor and city employees to no avail. She also mentioned that a hole was dug in front of her home in the same place for the 3rd time. Efficiency and repairs would have taken care of all of this the first time, not just repeat it 3 times. Thank you.
Okay, we appreciate citizens reaching out to us and appreciate them giving us their input on items and topics. That road's been a point of discussion for several people several times. And yeah, we need to learn from that and do a different judgment procedure another time. That has taken way too long and caused scenarios that have been unfortunate for the city residents. With that said, Ty's working with the city crew to work on taking care of that. So Ty's working with that. Ty, do you have an idea timeline of when it might be completed at this point?
Yeah, we're about 2 weeks out. But you know, I concur with the mayor and I agree with a lot of that public comment. Things should be done differently in the future. And a lot of what she's talking about on the going back and digging holes a couple of times, it's because we've been fixing leaks at the same time we've been trying to do a new installation. And that road is in disrepair. But we didn't want to pave it before we did the water line. So water line first, hopefully we'll get it wrapped up. It was difficult for our guys to do the connections, not to mention the windstorm in the middle of the effort. And anyway, we've got all hands on deck this week, and we finished up 700 East, and so the attention's going to come back to 100 North and try and get that wrapped up. So,
And thank you. Okay, next item on the agenda is item number 5, resolution 20-17. It has to do with letter of understanding between Morgan City and Morgan Secondary Water Association regarding water for commercial and manufacturing uses. Compliment Gary and Gary's work on this. Gary worked very diligently with the Morgan Secondary Water's attorney in working through this document. John Schultz has been their attorney. Last time we discussed this, it's been a while back. There's a couple of things that we still want Gary to look at, and he has done. And again, appreciate that, Gary. Couple of things that he worked on and we changed. On item 5, it had in there that Morgan Secondary Water would approve the amount of acre foot that each share represented. We felt that ought to be from each ditch company would know what their shares are worth. So they removed that sentence at last item 5. Item number 1, the advisory board will make its recommendations through the land use authority. I used to say through planning commission. We felt like it didn't need to go through the planning commission, but the land use authority would be office staff plus Steve plus our planner. I think that's an appropriate way to do that. The other thing that we looked at working with is on the last page of the document. On item, the last page has to do with the sequence of building permits and approval and secondary water sign off on and giving their letter of approval. And we worked out, I talked to Mark today, and the way it's now is very doable and workable and works fine. Well, Gary, thank you very much for your input on that. Do you have anything you want to say on that, Gary?
No, I think it's, we got it where we wanted it. I just got to say thank you to you and also to Dave. There was a change also we made, your recommendation that we put in a formula was placed in there so that it is obvious what the formula is. And then Mayor, your catch on the water shares helps as well. So the input from the council, the mayor helped tremendously, and it takes a long time to get something approved by secondary water. I've learned that, but nonetheless, I think we're finally there.
Just wait till January and then see how long it takes.
The formula works really well. I'm very pleased with the way you put together the formula on this.
Nice job, Gary. Well done.
Thank you.
Will entertain any discussion, questions, or a motion?
Mayor, I move to approve resolution 20-17. Resolution adopting and approving the letter of understanding between Morgan City and Morgan Secondary Water Association, clarifying the policy for the provision of secondary water to commercial and manufacturing use in Morgan City.
Is there a second on the motion?
I'll second that, Mayor.
Okay, motion by David, second by Jeffrey. We pass resolution 20-17, a resolution adopting and approving the letter of understanding between Morgan City and Morgan Secondary Water Association, clarifying the policy for the provision of secondary water to commercial and manufacturing uses in Morgan City. Is there any discussion on that motion? Okay, seeing none, proceed to vote. We'll take a roll call vote since it's a resolution. Tony?
Aye.
Jeffrey?
Aye.
And David?
Aye.
Okay, motion passed unanimously with 3 ayes. Appreciate your work again of Gary on that and getting that completed and put together. Okay, next item is resolution 20-25. It's the exchange agreement between Morgan City and Morgan School District. Tony kind of brought this up and Todd been working on it a bit. All that Tony just kind of explained what the starting point of this was, and then Ty can explain a little bit about what the document you have before you. So Tony, maybe you can explain what started this or what it actually accomplishes.
Well, Kelly Priest originally approached me. Kelly's a member of the school board, and brought to my attention that over at the Wilkinson Recplex, that the property lines between the Morgan School District and Morgan City really didn't make a whole lot of sense. For example, if you looked at the boundaries, the city actually owned about halfway into the outfield of the baseball field, and the city owned a portion of the Recplex, and so quite simply the boundaries didn't make any sense. And so what we have come up with was a quick claim deed where we changed the boundaries. The city now still owns the Mickelson Mile and everything from the Mickelson Mile over to the river. And then there's a little notch out there that the city owns there that houses the substation. Then we quit claim deeded everything else that we had in the city's name to the Morgan School District. So it was simply just a matter of cleaning up the boundary and tidying it up and making it look so it makes sense. It looks sensible now. So it's much better in my estimation than what it was. So.
Couple other pieces we did along the way also is we established in writing a right of way to get to the substation. You know, they've grown in there quite a few years. We've driven between the football field and the softball, baseball field. We established that right of way in writing to give us that right of way and that easement. Also an easement for our power lines and power poles. That easement's also part of this agreement. And then also across the river, where the new street and bridge will go in for the road's going to cross the river and go extend Young Street. It goes to the middle of the school properties there. We've also quit claim deed some ground the school owned over there, so we have the access on both sides of that road and the roadway to be able to put that bridge in. We also, that's part of this agreement as well, is those pieces of ground the school gave back to the city. So it's a city property where that bridge goes in. Those are some of the pieces. Ty, anything else you'd like to add, or does that cover it pretty well?
That covers it really well. It's nice to have this done before that bridge project starts so that we don't have any discrepancy on ownership, because that'll cost us a lot of money to be in the middle of the project and not have those boundaries defined. So and the school's already approved it, so that's
right. They approved it back on the 8th.
Looks like a great idea to make sure and clean everything up and make it neat moving forward so we can get that bridge project going. Great catch on the city.
Any further questions or input from the council, or I'm ready for a motion?
So, Mayor, I've got a little bit. You mentioned that this has been done. Have we recorded documents yet?
No,
Okay, it will be.
yeah. As
Okay.
soon as the mayor signs everything, then I can take them to have them recorded. I do have the signed exchange agreement now, though, from the school district. I got that today.
Okay. So I've got a couple of technical items, maybe one just for you, Denise, a spelling correction, and then Gary, one that I'd like you to chime in on. Tell me what you think. On the resolution, 1, 2, 3, 4 paragraphs in or down, just in the middle of that paragraph, just a spelling error. That portion of the city's properties, cities is spelled as if it were one or more city. I mean, we want it to just be Y''S to make it possessive, I guess. That portion of the CITY''S would be the proper spelling.
Okay,
You
thank
see-
you.
And then that's also on the exchange agreement because they mirror each other.
Okay.
And then Gary, so as I look through the different agreements, there's multiple ones. There's some questions that come up. We've got 3 different entities that we're dealing with. Morgan County School District, the Board of Education of the Morgan County School District, and then the Morgan City. And just to kind of summarize it in 2 documents, Morgan County School District is the grantor of a slope easement, the quick claim deed on lot 1. And then on 2 other documents, the Board of Education, Morgan County School District is a grantor, a power line easement, a quick claim deed. And then Morgan City is the grantor, quit claiming our 3.24 acres to the Board of Education, Morgan County School District. And rather than take time to look at all of those, that's just a little bit of a summary. But I guess in my mind, the Board of Education would be the governing body of the school district, not unlike the city council is the governing body of the city. city council doesn't own property. You know, Morgan City does. I don't know that the governing body owns the property or should own it, and they may do. And it kind of looked from the engineer's drawing that perhaps they did. And whether that was an error or not, I don't know. But it seems to me that it should be Morgan County School District owning the property, and then the Board of Education giving the authority or direction to, make the changes.
So there's a couple of things. First of all, the school board's attorney called me and we discussed the same issue, Dave, that you just indicated to me, because some of the documents were actually in the name of the school board, some were actually in the name of the school district.
Mhm.
The important thing for us and the thing that counts, and Denise has done a great job of this, but she checks with the county recorder's office to see exactly who owns it.
Mhm.
And unless it's transferred in the very same name of the individual on the deed, in other words, exactly the way that it is on the deed, the county recorder will kick it back. So even though the school board really, technically it's the school district that owns the property, if the school board is listed on the deed, we have to convey it
Sure.
back to the school board. And both the attorney for the school and myself determined that that was pretty much the same thing, and that it was, as long as it was consistent and the recorder would record it, we're okay. But you're right. The board doesn't own the property. It's really the school district that should, and perhaps someday they'll straighten that out. Who knows?
A topic for another day. Yeah, and I agree. And of course, didn't have a title search or policy to, check on names. Only the engineer drawing. One last item. Let me find it here. Where did it go? That is in the packet. There's a resolution, and this appears to come from the school district. There was, and it looks like it's probably a modification of our resolution, which,
Right.
Whatever, but because there was no resolution number on it, and it's signed by Scott McMillan, of course, the business administrator, but it is on behalf of the school district. Now, therefore, be it resolved by the Morgan County School Board as follows: that the agreement be adopted and approved and so forth. But I guess where I'm having a little bit of heartache is it's signed by Scott McMillan, Morgan County Business Administrator. I'd like to see something that gives Scott McMillan authority to sign it, i.e. the school board making that authorization. Yeah, and I think that could happen if this document were signed by the school board rather than the business administrator. And my suspicion is he's not a board member. Is that correct? Does anybody know? Yeah,
Scott is not a board member. He's
Right.
business administrator.
but I mean,
Scott signed all the documents in here.
right.
My guess is they have given him, help clarify this, Gary. My guess is the school board has given Scott, rather than the board president or rather than the superintendent, they've given Scott as business administrator the authority to sign documents for them. And in the past, the person in that position before Scott was, this is Paul, for your first name now.
Yeah.
Lynn,
And
Delynn Paul. And she used to sign all the documents beforehand. So my guess is, as a school policy, they've given that authority to their business manager rather than the superintendent or the board president. Gary, would you weigh in on that concept?
Yeah. I haven't seen the documents, but principally on deeds and on the conveyance of property, the chief administrative officer has the authority to be able to convey those. In our form of government, where we got 6-member council form, you hold both administrative and legislative authority, and you've delegated that to the mayor, the signing of these documents to the mayor, and that's the reason we bring it back to the council and authorize the mayor to sign that. But in some jurisdictions, the governing body will assign that responsibility on the day-to-day operations of the city and the conveyance of property to the chief administrative officer. Salt Lake City is a really good example of that. Now, I don't have the document in my hands, that they use to, it probably is in either their policies or their, they actually have a set of bylaws that they abide by. But I do know that their attorney, and I can't remember her name now, but she went over her documents the same way I went over ours, and made sure that they were signed by the appropriate person and that the appropriate person was on the document. So I don't know if that helps, Dave, but I agree with you. But chances are what the mayor said is exactly right, and that is he's the authorized person for the signing of those documents.
And I don't doubt that he isn't, and feel comfortable in that. And maybe just the discussion is good enough, but I guess the question would be, and I think, I think it would feel better if we had something authorizing him by, whether just as you make reference to either board minutes or, policy or whatever, that would say the business administrator is hereby authorized to sign, for the school. But
what does the resolution state down below?
well, it says, now therefore be it resolved by the Morgan County School Board as follows, and then he's signing it. Well, he's not part of the school board.
But does it authorize anybody to execute the documents?
Let's see.
Does-
Yeah, I think this is what we'd be looking for, but then he signed it himself.
Yes.
Does that agreement entitled exchange agreement between Morgan City and Morgan County School District be adopted and approved, that the school district business administrator be authorized to execute the agreement and all other documents necessary to complete this transaction? So my point is, if the school board or a member of the board or a member or the school board president signed it, man, we're home free because they just authorized him, but he signed it.
You're saying he signed the resolution?
Right.
And
Authorizing in my mind, on behalf of the school board.
Dave, read number 2 again, the very bottom.
Yeah, that the school district business administrator, i.e. the person that has signed the resolution, be authorized to execute the agreement and all other documents necessary to complete the transaction. I mean, bingo, there it is. But
that gives Scott authorization in the resolution to sign it.
right, but Scott
2.
signed it. Scott's not part of the board.
I understand your issue. What he's saying is that the resolution belongs to the board,
Mhm.
and the chair of the board should have probably signed the resolution authorizing Scott to sign it.
Yeah.
But it doesn't, once the deed is recorded, it doesn't make it any less valid.
Yeah, fair enough.
So we could go back and ask them, I certainly could ask them for whatever authorization they give themselves to, to have Scott sign those things. But the bottom line is, once those deeds are recorded, if there's nobody that contests them, then we're.
Yeah, well, and like you say, we all recognize that the business administrator can do that and has in the past and will in the future. So maybe that's good enough.
When we drafted all of the documents, he actually had we asked them who to put on the signatory lines, and he had us add that. And I think in their process, he's their signatory, but they had to actually vote on it. So I think they approved it at their last meeting. So we didn't have signed copies until after their board meeting when they approved it.
Okay.
We had blank ones and he didn't sign it until after the board meeting. And so I think that's that same process that the mayor signs for us, but I can also be assigned to sign on behalf of the city council, even though I'm not a member of the city council. Once the decision's been made, but my signature is not valid until the city council votes on it, as well as the mayor's. So, but I think they went through their own processes, so I'm
It sounds
comfortable.
like then they
with
would
what
have, yeah, it would have been the proper procedure. Gary, I mean, that seems like a lot of work. I sense the opinion would be we just go forward as is.
I think you're fine as long as they made the motion and there's a record in the meeting of the board making the motion. The person who actually signs the resolution and I think the recording of the deeds validates what the
Mhm.
motion that was made. So I think you're all right, but your point is correct. And that is that if it's a resolution, a board member resolution, there should be something that allows for the chief executive officer to sign it, but it doesn't affect the validity of those deeds. That's all I'm saying. It would be more of a formality for us to ask for that to happen, but
No, I'd agree. I think we're 99% there. Let's get her done.
I think so. Thanks, Dave.
Thank you.
Further discussion or a motion?
Mayor? Mayor,
Yes, Tony.
I will make a motion that we approve or adopt resolution 20-25, a resolution adopting and approving an exchange agreement between Morgan City and the Morgan County School District.
Is there a second?
I'll second that, Mayor.
A motion by Tony, seconded by Jeffrey. We adopt resolution 20-25, a resolution adopting and approving an exchange agreement between Morgan City and Morgan County School District. Is there any further discussion on the motion? Okay, seeing none, we'll proceed to vote by roll call. Tony,
Aye.
Jeffrey,
Aye.
and David.
Aye.
Okay, motion passed unanimously. We appreciate all the work on that from the parties involved. Type of lost a lot of effort, so the nation, Gary, with that item as well as the school. Last, number 7 on your agenda, resolution 20-26. Connection to Morgan City Water Service, Terry Lawrence. We've gone through that. Last meeting, we tabled up for a couple of them taken care of. They have been. I've reviewed it as well as talked with Jamie and others. The resolution before you tonight has the item before we talked about. Mr. Lawrence and his wife, they come in, they've signed the documents they need to. With that, it's pretty straightforward, which I was presented before you. Mr. Lawrence will pay the expenses to tap into the city's main line and pay the expenses to run his lateral, and then pay the fees as set up for the tapping fees, the impact fees, and the cost of setting the meter, as well as the cost of installation and the county cost to cross county road. And Mr. Lawrence will also pay them the out of city fees for culinary water, which are stated in the agreement. With that summary, any further discussion or questions from the council? Or if you're ready, I'll accept the motion.
Mayor, I'd move that we approve resolution 20-25. Resolution
26.
adopting and approving the petition from Terry and Dora Lawrence to connect to Morgan City water system.
Is there a second?
Second up.
Okay,
Oh,
motion by
Yeah.
David, second by Tony. We passed resolution 20-26. Resolution adopting and approving the petition from Terry and Dora Lawrence to connect to Morgan City water system. Is there any discussion on the motion? Okay, seeing none, we'll proceed to vote again by roll call since it's a resolution. Tony,
Aye.
Jeffrey,
aye.
and David.
Aye.
Okay, motion passed unanimously and resolution 2026 has been completed. Okay, next item on your agenda is item number 8. It's a discussion item. It deals with carport regulation and how they're affected in the city as far as city zoning ordinance goes. And Denise has given you the code section there for your review. We have online now with us, we have Steve Garside, who's our city attorney planner. We also have the Jackson, Heidi and Rich Jackson, who brought this question before us for us to discuss and have a discussion on it. Let's see, excuse me. Tyler, would you take a minute and explain just from what your involvement was, and then we'll turn it over to Jackson's and let either Heidi or Rich or both of you, talk what your question and thoughts are.
Sure, I'll just kind of.
I'll let Steve interpret both comments.
So, yeah, I'll just go ahead and introduce kind of the scenario and then let Heidi and Rich talk for themselves. Just so Heidi and Rich know, I haven't talked to any council members or our planner about this, just so you can have your questions answered kind of unfiltered without me being involved, because it does kind of deal with a discrepancy between me as the city manager, code enforcement officer, and interpretation maybe of the code. So if there's something that I've erred on, I want to give them the fair chance to discover that or call that out. So I don't have my dates with me. I probably would have been more prepared last week before the wind incident, but we got a call at the office that just was a complaint that someone was building a carport. Gave us the address. Mark went and looked at it, and then he passed it on to me and said, yeah, there's a Jackson's have built a carport and it doesn't fit our one, it requires a building permit because it's over 200 square feet, and then two, it doesn't fit on doesn't maintain the setback requirements on the side of the house. So even with a permit, it wouldn't fit. So I think I talked to Rich first, just called and let him know what was going on. And this entire time they've been really good to work with, and I really appreciate them. And I've just talked to them verbally and about the code. I gave them a copy of the setback requirements, just but I haven't done anything formal action like I would normally. I really just think that the best approach is to work with people, come to the resolution, give them time to remedy the situation, and that's kind of where we're at. So we've just put it on hold until we could bring it to council, and just the review of the code. So it's the side setback requirement for an accessory building is 5 feet from the side yard if it's 10 feet behind the building. So if it's not 10 feet behind the building, then the side setback of the primary structure applies, which is 10 feet. So that pretty much just says there's no room there on the side of their house to put any type of a structure. I do have some pictures that maybe I'll share. And it's not that it's unsightly. It's actually looks really good considering Rich did the work himself. Sorry, Rich. I'm still seeing how to share the let me see this. Did that share? Yes. Okay, so it's a pretty big camper. I think it's a 40 something. I mean, this carport's 40 something feet long. I didn't really measure it, but it goes from the side of the house right there to the side of the property. And I was gonna see if I could maybe share another view. I was standing kind of under it, so it's not as maybe daunting as that. Maybe this is a better view. Unfortunately, we didn't get there until after it was built. And that's always a hard thing, is once someone's completed the work, is to go back later and tell them. So that one kind of gives you a better perspective of where it's at on I think there's about up close on the front of the building, or the lot, there's about
3 or so feet. And then on the very back corner, it's within like 1.5 feet or 2 feet of the back property. So that's what I'll leave it at that and give the rest of the floor to,
Can you put that picture back up, Ty?
I hope so. Which,
The
the
last,
one on the side?
the last one you showed.
Oh, I actually just X'd out of that picture. Let me. Go back to the, well, here's one with the back corner, and I'll try and pull that other one up. It was saved on my email. So let's see. Can you see that?
Yes.
That's the one with the back corner.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And then I'll pull up the other. Maybe it was this one that
Yeah.
you're,
Yeah, that's the one right there.
oh, you can see that too?
Yeah, I can see that, yes.
Oh, so do I just need to maximize that, or I don't know what it looks like to everybody else?
No, it looks fine to me. And for the questions I have, it looks fine to me, so.
Okay, then I'll turn the time over to the Jacksons, and then I will probably not speak anymore unless you have specific questions of me or the process or how I handled the situation. I did explain that my job's to just go off of the ordinances that we have on the books, and I try not to ever pick and choose when they apply and when they don't, unless the council tells me differently. So.
So
Heidi, Rich?
Yes, first of all, I'd like to thank you for your time this evening. And I'd like to give a little backstory to this, just as far as we went to great lengths to pick something that would match the home, that wouldn't be an eyesore to our neighbors. And I know that has nothing to do with code, but just the thought process that went into this. And as well as when the complaint come in, I'd like it to bring it to your attention that I went door to door, because I would like to think that, neighbor relations are more important than any structure I put up. And even though we intended to fully come before you, before I did that, I wanted to contact the neighbors, find out what the complaint was, and make sure that if I did, pursue this further, that it wouldn't be an issue for anyone. As you can see, the carport borders our home as well as 2 neighboring backyards. So we're not even up against a home. Both of those neighbors don't have a problem with it. They said it was fine, doesn't bother them at all. Had great discussions with them as I continued to go around the neighborhood to identify what the complaint was. The person that filed the complaint ended up apologizing. She had used our carport as leverage in hopes to get a 6-foot fence put in her front yard. And, she felt horrible, said she'd withdraw the complaint. I told her it's fine. There's no bad feelings. I said, we'll go to the city council. We'll figure it out and go through the correct channels. As we move forward with this, I guess where we are bordering 2 backyards, is there a possibility of creating an exception for this carport? It is a temporary structure that we can move down. We do intend to bolt it into the concrete, just because obviously we had the windstorms. Thankfully, it stayed up during those windstorms, because right now you can see it's held down by tie downs, because when it was brought to our attention that we were not in alignment with code, we halted, and then, we just held it in place the best we could. We're glad it stayed, but we do intend to bolt it down, but it could be unbolted and moved if needed. The other point I would like to make is my 5th wheel is going to be parked there anyway. And it's not a lot bigger than my 5th wheel. I would like to protect my property, and, and I intend to abide by whatever decision you come up with, but I'm just asking, for the council to maybe consider an exception. And I don't know if you want to add to that.
Yeah, so one thing, obviously, we didn't maliciously do this with the intent of, hey, let's just get this passed and hope nobody notices it. I didn't consider this much of a structure as it is. If it's something I can put together, I don't consider it much of a structure. So I didn't really consider that. Really, all I was looking at is a way to cover the trailer and try to preserve, the condition of that trailer. The trailer will be parked there anyway. It takes up just about as much room. It goes from the very front to the very back of this carport. And so there was no malicious intent in that. And really, part of the other reason is I try to consider maybe what the spirit versus the letter of the law was, or in this case, the ordinance. And I would have a better time understanding it if I were sitting next to a house and I was a side neighbor with the adjoining property. But with both of the properties, my property sits at a different angle facing west. Their properties face south, and I have 85 plus feet between this carport and anybody's permanent structure, anyone's structure whatsoever. I literally am in the back fence of those two neighbors that I border their property. So it's not even as if I have installed this and put it right next to someone's house. As you can see, there's two big pine trees there. The neighbors right there that have 95% of this bordering their property have those two trees there. But we were real concerned when we had the complaint. We didn't go around, or Heidi didn't go around looking for somebody to crucify. We went around to find out, to apologize to whomever we may have offended for putting this up. And when we found out that there was nobody that was offended, or at least that they said at that time, they were just trying to manipulate some things so they could get what they wanted, which was that 6-foot fence in their front yard. It turned out to be a bad situation, but that person isn't even a neighbor of ours or a bordering neighbor of ours at all. They were just trying to use it as leverage. So I'm just hoping that this exception can come from the difference maybe between the spirit and the letter. I think the spirit, and anyone can correct me, would be the fact that you're just jamming too much into tight quarters. And I'm sorry, the letter would be more like that. And the spirit would just be to try to protect the neighbors from somebody building on top of their house. That's really all I've got. I could cry. Because if I have to put that down, I'm going to be pulling Ty over there and put him up on the man lift for 12 hours with me to pull that thing down. So maybe you ought to consider before you decide how much you like Ty.
I appreciate that. Steve's on last time. Steve, appreciate you joining us, taking a minute out of your other meeting. Thank you for that. Steve, would you like to just give us just a touch of background on what the code is and maybe what our possibilities are in this situation? Just so we've got an idea of the background of the code, maybe the whys for some of those pieces. Steve?
Are you muted, Steve?
We put him to sleep.
Steve's muted. Steve, you're muted. I can't hear you. Don't know what we got going on.
Is your computer sound on? Go down to the arrow at the very bottom on the right-hand side and look at your computer sound, see if it's on.
Denise, we can't hear Steve. Can you help us?
He's not muted. So I stopped screen sharing because I could look at the control panel, but he's not muted. It's on his.
Okay. All right.
And so maybe your earphones are for listening, but the mic portion is
Oh, yes.
maybe not working.
If
So,
he's listening to something else, then that would counteract the mic for this program. If he's listening to another meeting.
I know he listens to rock music when he skis. I'm not sure.
Yeah,
Maybe
I'm
he's
guessing he's,
do that.
I'm guessing he's,
We all should.
I'm guessing he's listening to the meeting that he left, the meeting we took him out of. He's probably listening to that meeting. And so listening to that meeting and the sound of this, they could conflict each other. Ty's correct with that concept.
Denise,
Then-
could Steve call in on his telephone for the audio?
yeah.
I think he's got Led
Oh,
Zeppelin.
I think we can hear him now. Steve, say something. I think we hear you typing. Oh, unless that was Denise.
Yeah. Is the sound on your computer, Steve?
Yeah.
Down right-hand
Yeah,
corner,
no.
there's that arrow, the up arrow, and you go there and you hit your volume control on the computer, because I think that's what's off. Not really an arrow, it looks like a roof. But
Oh, he's coming in. He's joining, I think, by cell phone now,
okay.
or rejoining, so. Oh, there's two of them.
Who's
Neither
Steve?
one of them had sound.
How about we try this one?
Yeah, holy smokes.
We hear you.
All right, I will get out of that one then.
Now we hear you in the other one.
Well, doing both. I'd like to see a conversation with yourself. That would be awesome.
Well, that would probably be a reason to have me sent to the asylum. Anyway, what I was saying is that this is not unique to Morgan City. We've had this issue arise on prior occasions, and you know, there's several reasons for the setbacks. Sometimes they're to preserve the easements, the public utility drainage easements. Sometimes they are in support of the fire code. That's why there's the different separation, whether the accessory structure is adjacent to the primary structure. So you got those separation requirements, but a lot of it is imposing. There is separation. I mean, those are to maintain basically the integrity and the value of this property as well as the surrounding properties. And so whether it's a rear yard setback or a side yard setback, we say, yeah, they're a long way from the homes now. However, basically, if someone on one of those other residential lots or adjoining lots decided they wanted to reconfigure how their structures are, tear it down, build a new home or whatever, because of this proximity, you have now limited what they can do on their property. I mean, obviously that might not be something that they do in the next 5, 10, 20 years, but eventually if someone wants to change something, whether it be an accessory structure or a primary structure, you've now restricted what it is that they can do on their property. I did receive a text from Gary, and he has a possible way to address this, but these setback codes are pretty important for those reasons. And again, not a unique situation. Unfortunately, we've had to have other people also remove these specific type of accessory structures. But I can let Gary talk about one of the thoughts that he's come up with.
Well,
Yeah, so
Steve, again, help me understand in my limited English, a side yard setback. Help me understand the reasons for those in general in the code. The one
Okay.
place I read the code, it says at least one side needs to be open for access to the backyard. Help me understand what that's meaning.
That you need to have basically just sufficient width between whatever structures you have and what your side yard is.
What's some of the reasoning for that?
There's a lot of reasons. One is to protect our public utility and drainage easements.
Okay, right. And if there's not one there, then does that one apply if there's no easements there?
Well, no, but then you've also got the fire code.
Okay, okay,
And then you've got the separation required between structures. And so if you don't maintain the side yard setback on one property, then you've imposed your will on your neighboring properties without, what them having a say. They can give permission, but they would actually have to grant grant some type of property interest. We can't delegate the authority of the city to set rules to neighbors, because we could have a neighborhood that everybody gets along and they play fast and loose with the rules. And then all of a sudden there's a neighbor that moves in that says, I want this ordinance enforced, or someone changes their mind and then we're really in a mess. And so, I tell people all the time, one of the responsibilities of city government is to draw a line. Is it 2 dogs? Is it 3 dogs? Is it 4 dogs? They've got to draw a line and be consistent so that everybody plays on the same set of rules, and protecting adjoining properties and the overall integrity of a neighborhood are one of the reasons that the city makes the requirements as far as the side yard setbacks, front yard setbacks, and the type of structures that can be there. I mean, you go to the extreme example, that's why, you wouldn't let someone run, a pig operation in the middle of a residential area. City government has to draw lines as long as they're reasonable and enforceable and consistent.
in your experience, one other question, your experience, as you know, in other cities, has anybody considered, looked at the situation of these portable, these carports are being put out, these mill structures, see those all over different places. Has anybody looked at those as being a different element rather than the building? Has that ever come up?
They've almost universally have identified those as accessory structures. I know that on occasion, the term we use that it's a temporary structure, but a temporary structure means that it's usually got to be gone within a relatively short period of time, like less than a month.
Okay, thank you. Gary, you're going to say something?
I was just gonna ask, so if they were to come in today, this is in a agricultural or residential zone, they're both the same, the setbacks are the same. So is it my understanding, Steve, just reading through the ordinance, it looks like if they were to come in and have applied for this, it would be a structure under our definition of structure. And Mark has deemed them a structure for building permit purposes if they're over 200 square feet. And one of the reasons is snow load and the very winds that you saw the other day. That's the reason he considers them a structure, and he has to actually inspect the engineering standards on them, but that's a different issue. But if they were to come in today, they could place this structure behind the home as long as they were 5 feet behind the home, and they could be 5 foot from the fence as long as they're 5 foot behind the home. If they're beside the home, there has to be a 10-foot separation between the accessory structure and the neighbor's side yard. Am I understanding that right? The way I read it.
That's the way it reads.
Okay. Yeah, I just want to make sure that I understood the way the code reads today, because that's significant. And then the second question would be, how do you vary a code? If you've got a set of rules that you put into place, can the council just say, oh, let's forget about those in this situation because it's different than other situations? Or can you say, what are the means of varying that? And
that's, yeah, and that brings up a good point. There is a provision for a variance with these type of regulations. However, because of the nature of the way that zoning and building codes are developed, to obtain a variance has some pretty strict requirements in order to obtain one. And those are set out both in state law, the legislature authorizes those, and it's been replicated in our city ordinance. But again, it's a pretty high burden because of the deference that is given to these regulations. You have to establish that indeed you can't enjoy a property right on your property that others can, that there's some unique feature or some type of a hardship that's not financial, some type of a hardship that renders your property different from others. Again, that there's rights that you cannot enjoy because of that uniqueness, because of those restrictions. And so again, there is that variance process. It does not go to the council. It actually goes to an independent hearing officer. But the burden of proof on that is very difficult. And Gary, you were going to talk about another potential.
Yeah, this is, of course, the building permit's totally separate. Mark's gonna have to look at it in relative to that, as to whether or not it could be anchored properly, whether it has the right snow load. It looks like it's pretty high. I don't know if the height complies with the height in the residential zone. It might. But if say it complies with all that, and the only violation or problem is the setback, yeah, it is peculiar that that your side yard meets somebody else's rear yard. And the only other way of changing it, other than going through the variance process, which is Steve's identified as a very impossible, almost impossible process, unless you've got some very peculiar aspect of your property, like you're on a hillside or something like that, you're probably not going to get a variance. And so I have seen one other solution to the problem, but it's not an easy solution. I had a daughter who had the same problem with a neighbor encroaching into her side yard, and into their getting closer to her home by putting a structure in their side yard. She had some additional feet between her house and her side lot line. And the side lot line is measured from the side lot line of the house, or sideline of the house. So from the actual wall of the house to the side lot line. And so what they did was they arranged with the neighbor so that they would be technically correct. I mean, I wouldn't recommend this if you had another neighbor sitting right there in your side yard, because there are many other reasons. One of the main reasons is for fire protection, to be able to get around your home if it ever catches fire. That 10 feet becomes extremely important to our firefighters. But where you've got 85 feet to the neighbor's house, what you could do, if you could talk the neighbor into it, is the neighbor could convey to you 10 feet of their property, and before you get excited, and then you convey back to them a permanent easement over that 10 feet for landscaping and, for their use, period. And for everything except a structure. They couldn't put a structure back there. That would accomplish the purpose of the ordinance, but it would also leave everything exactly the way that it is. So if that neighbor in the future decided that they wanted to put a shed up, for example, they just couldn't put it in that 10 feet at the very back of their property, because the whole purpose of the ordinance is that you have some type of separation between permanent buildings or even temporary buildings of a certain size over 200 square feet and your house. And so that's another way of solving it, but I don't know how friendly you are with your neighbors and whether or not they'd be willing to do that, but that's another option. The only other option beyond that would be to come up with a very specialized ordinance for this one particular instance, which may happen again or may never happen again, where a side yard is facing somebody's rear yard, and you've got more than enough for their rear yard and your side yard. In other words, you got 85 feet. Their rear yard needs to be 30 feet. So you'd have to have at least 10-foot side yard, 30 foot of their rear yard. You'd have to have at least 40 feet and then another 10 feet, as a side yard in there. So it'd be about 50 feet that you'd have to have between their closest structure and your home.
And that would be just about at every corner in a residential area, there's someone whose backyard is adjacent to someone's side yard.
Correct. So essentially, you could have these units, if the city council decided to change the code tonight for you, which they couldn't, they'd have to go through the planning commission and through the process of changing the code, which is about a 2 or 3 month process. They would have to change it, and it would probably be applicable. The unintended consequences would apply to a bunch of lots in the city, and that's something the council would have to decide whether they wanted to do or not. But that's the only other way of changing it, unfortunately. Otherwise, they have to make sure that you comply with the ordinance, and that's kind of the hard and fast truth of the whole thing. So sorry.
Okay.
Gary,
Council, now weigh in on some questions, thoughts?
Gary,
Or-
just a question on your concept there with your daughter. I mean, if a neighbor deeded, say, 10 feet, could that create a illegal use as far as zoning is concerned for the neighbor's lot? In other words, say they had a 10,000 foot, an R110, and to convey that, then, and their lot was exactly 10,000 square feet, could that then reduce their 10,000 to something non-conforming?
Yes, you picked out the flaw in my solution. And
Yeah.
that is that you could compromise it because of the size of the lot. You could also
Mhm.
compromise it because they don't have a 30-foot rear yard anymore,
Mhm.
a required
Sure,
rear
yeah.
yard. But in this case, what I understood is they've got a pretty
may-
big rear yard.
Yeah, it
Yeah.
still may work.
Yeah.
Just curious, did that work for your daughter? Did it ultimately?
Yeah, she had a big lot. And so she
Okay.
was able to do that. And the neighbor, there was no difference except the neighbor owned 10 feet of her property, and she owned a permanent easement
Mhm.
over that 10 feet. And so, it's a sacrifice on the part of the neighbor because they don't quite have as large a lot as they did. And all they've got is an easement over that 10 feet, but that's
Gary,
a possible solution.
Gary, in your other example,
Mhm.
the purchase of the property and then the easement, the example that you used. So if somebody sold that home, is that transferable? Would that, if somebody else came into that home,
The same restriction would apply in it travels with the land.
travels with the land?
Now, what
Yeah.
you could, I guess, Steve, we're doing fancy lawyering here, the two of us, but you could potentially have a reversion in there that if you ever took the structure down, that then it would revert back to, the owner of the property would revert back to your neighbor and the easement would be extinguished. But it's a crazy way of doing it. But really there's not much choice when you've got an ordinance in place, everybody abides by it, or if you start compromising it, nobody abides by it. And that's the problem.
Just a couple of more quick questions. So maybe this is directed at Steve. So Steve, is there a height limit on this type of a structure?
Yeah, there is. The height limit in the residential zone is at, I believe it's at 35 feet. So to me, it looked like it was okay from the height that was above the eaves, but I'm confident that it's not higher than the peak of the home.
And then, do I understand correctly that it should not extend out past the front of the home, but it should be, the ordinance should be 5 feet behind? Is that correct?
No, the front setback has to comply with your front setback line anyway, so which is probably the equivalent of the main structure.
It's okay. Further question from council? Or thoughts?
Just one thing for me real
Yeah,
quick.
Heidi, Rich, do you ever intend to enclose the structure?
No, quite
Yeah, just-
honestly, we're talking long periods of time here. I don't anticipate having a fifth wheel the rest of my life either. So it's there mainly to just protect the fifth wheel itself and the trailer and my property. I also made sure that it didn't, that it wasn't any further than my house is towards the front, if that makes sense. I haven't completed the house. So in the picture, he has my third car garage in there, which is set back 7 feet from the main structure of my house, which is actually pushed forward 7 feet or so. So it sits back far enough. There is no issue between, you know, the curb and gutter, sidewalk, whatever it is. There's plenty of room there. I guess I'm still just having the problem with, I know the discussion's not over. The fifth wheel will be there anyway. And we're talking a roof over a fifth wheel. We're not talking sides. We're not talking a front or back. We're not talking a fire hazard. As far as trying to get a fifth wheel out of there would be a bigger issue than getting a fire truck along the side of my house. So, you know, we have seen some around that are literally sitting on a side yard to side yard. It is a carport. I know it's happened before. I'm not saying, hey, let's go police all of those and, you know, try to tell them they need to take them down. It's happened before. That was part of the example where I was believing there just wasn't a big issue. So this is your time for your discussion. I apologize.
Good
Thank you.
comments.
Go ahead, David.
Yeah, Steve, I mean, without the enclosure, and I think you mentioned before that the carport does meet the definition of a, you know, of a structure. If a person just wanted to put an awning, say, off the side of their house, would that still require the same setbacks?
Yes. You can have awnings that go into the setback a little bit if they're connected to the home. But it would be something that's connected, an awning that is connected to the home, or a deck.
Would still need to meet the same setback. In other words,
It can actually go into the setback a couple of feet. I think it was 2 feet.
By 2 feet according to code.
Well, so you could have,
Question for council.
if you had a 10-foot, if you had a 10-foot setback from the fence, you could stick an awning out 3 feet from your home.
2 feet
2 feet from your home. Okay,
on the side and like 5 feet in the back.
gotcha. Well, yeah, and I
No
think,
discussion. Okay, go ahead, David.
yeah, I think on the back, depending on the size of your lot, you can go up to 10 feet, it seemed like. Well, no, I take it back. That was a deck, not an awning.
Yeah,
That was a deck.
all right. Further discussion or thoughts? Tony or Jeffrey?
I'm just kind of mentally going around the city to see how many more of these you see around, what kind of can of worms we're digging into here.
Yeah, that's my same thought, as I can think of several right here sitting that, you know, have slipped past us somehow that do not conform to our ordinance.
So can I
Don't know
just,
if that makes it right, but you know,
let me throw a couple of things in if I could, Mr. Mayor.
Sure, go ahead.
Members of the
Please.
council. So one of the things, I know Mark has identified these as structures if they're over 200 square feet. I don't know how big this is, but I'm assuming if it's covering a fifth wheel, it's got to be bigger than 200 square feet. Most of the garages or just the easy ups and that type of thing that you see are probably not over that 200 square foot limit. And so they would not count as a structure per se. But so
Just
one thing that you can mess with is the definition of structure, but you got to remember, if you mess with the definition of structure, it has consequences all over the city. And so,
So Gary, can I comment on that?
sure.
The 200-foot designation is based on whether you need a building permit or not. It's
That's
tied to
right.
building permit, not the definition of structure. It's tied to building permit, not definition of structure.
That's correct. Yeah, the building permit has a definition of structure. The
Right.
building code does, and then the zoning code does as well. And the
Right.
zoning code simple, it just says that which is framed, erected, constructed, or placed upon the ground.
Right, correct.
So it's
So a
any-
doghouse, You need a setback for
Sorry,
your
Ty.
dog.
Yep.
Did you have, Ty, did you have a,
Go ahead. You just get clarified 200 for that.
oh, okay, sorry.
Anything else? Anything else, anybody? Any other comments, Tony?
Did this require a building permit?
Would have done, yeah. Yeah, would have done up front, right? While you're thinking, let me throw out a couple of thoughts then. Okay, as far as decision, doesn't necessarily have to be decided tonight. If you have some criteria you want to consider and look at and think about, you're welcome to not make a decision tonight. It's just all for discussion anyway. It's not on for decision, just all for discussion. And that's one item to keep in mind. The other thing to keep in mind, and maybe you want to drive around town and look at some other situations. Are there situations where you think legitimately and logically, where you wouldn't impose on neighbors and wouldn't impose on the fire code, that makes sense to make some adjustments to the code? That's something you can look at and consider. The other piece is, and I don't know if we want to talk with our fire marshal about the fire code to see what fire code requirements and needs are as far as side yards. As I talked about that, looked at a little bit, it's pretty difficult to get a fire truck through a lot of side yards and just have fences and stuff in the road. And so I guess one thing I would do would be go contact our fire marshal and talk about fire code piece and access in the backyard. The other reason that Steve mentioned is living in neighbor's property. And I can see that very fully on a side yard. I get that between two side yards. And I guess the question, does it a backyard that meets your side, does that make a difference? I'm not saying it should. You're saying as you think through that and consider that piece, does that make a difference in what we consider and what we look at? So to me, there's still several things that I would like to go, I guess, look at and consider and get more data on from a personal basis. Excuse me, to see what direction to finally go with this one. When we're in the fire code, those kind of things. The other question I think we need to look at and consider is these, even though they are a structure, and by code they fit definite structures, setbacks they do. I guess we need to look at that as far as the carports we see around that seem to be more prevalent around. I don't know what their additional pieces as far as fire protection goes. Again, that'd be a discussion I would like to have with the fire marshal and get his take on that from the state fire code perception. See what that has to do with it, if anything, with these pole structures or these carports, what they had to say with that, if they have anything to say about that. Those are a couple of things I guess that I've come up with and thought about as far as things that I would like to see and consider. Gary gave us one possible option to change the lot line. The other possible option is to look at our code and see if there's anything in general we want to change that would affect the whole city. Again, not just this one case, but in other situations in the city, the side yards in somebody's backyard, does that make a difference on setbacks? If you're talking property rights and fire code, again, I don't know the answers to that yet, but I would find out those answers on the fire code. As far as limiting the neighbor's property rights, I'm gonna have to think on that a bit. Steve, I'm not sure how, if I've got a structure in my backyard or my side yard, in someone else's backyard, I'm not sure how that limits their ability to build in their yard. I'm still lost on that concept. I'm gonna have to say that a little bit or talk a little more about that. They can still do anything in their backyard they could do before. They still get their 5 foot setback from their property line. So I'm not sure that restricts them building their backyard. I'm lost on that.
You want me to explain that to you?
Please, if you would.
Okay, so yeah, you have a setback requirement, but then this goes to there's a fire code separation as well.
Right.
And so if you built right to your property line and the fire code said, okay, there's got to be a 10-foot separation, then you could no longer build at the 5-foot setback, even if it were your rear yard. You'd then have to build another 5 feet away.
So that 10 feet away instead of 5 feet away.
Correct.
Okay, that makes sense then. And I'm not sure the fire code, if it says anything different about a metal pole carport structure versus say wooden building. And again, that's something to talk. I'm going to talk to fire code about this piece if the council wants to take some more time to look at this. All right. With that, with those items said, I entertain some more discussion from council or
So,
anybody else. Go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, I guess maybe more from the legal standpoint, Gary and Steve. Let's suppose that suppose that the structure was not allowed, that we couldn't go along with it. Is there an obligation by the city to then look at any structure in the city and make a similar determination and ask that it be removed? In other words, the fact that a structure's been there for 10 years versus 10 days, it would seem to me that time shouldn't be a factor.
You're correct. It wouldn't. It's the ordinances remain, inviolate, and you can enforce them. They would have to establish that the city was more than lax, perhaps intentional in not enforcing it, some type of detrimental reliance on the city's inaction. But just the fact that you've missed a code violation does not tie your hands and restrict your ability to enforce it.
Good question, Dave. Any other comments or thoughts?
Ray, I think you've made some good points there. And one that stands out in my mind is, as we discuss, and I first look at the spirit, as Rich would say, and man, that looks like it works by all means. And for it to work, does that mean that there is some room or consideration for an ordinance change? But I think the one that the issue that stands out in my mind is the fire aspect, as Steve talks about. I think that it would probably make sense to have a information on that at a minimum before making a decision.
Tony, Jeffrey?
I think I concur with you, Mayor. I think I'd like to have some time to think about this. I'd also think I'd like to, have you chat with the fire marshal. I'd also like to take a little walkabout or drive through the city and take a look at, some of these other situations that we have out there. So I wouldn't mind having a little more time to mull this over, think about it.
So, Rich, do you want to rat on your neighbors?
We've done the walkabout and we don't want to put anybody else in the position that we're in. But
Right.
I can tell you up front, it's opening a whole can of worms, but I am not going to be the one that tells you where they're at.
So can I make a request?
Fair enough.
Request of the council is if you go around and look at them, don't tell me where they're at, because literally I can't think of any right now. And just because I travel around the city, unless I'm specifically looking for something, it doesn't stand out. And so based on the decision on the back end related to David's question, is if we do want to retroactively go back and through the city, I'd like to protect myself from that scenario. And Jackson's have been amazing. They're awesome because they don't want to have something that's not compliant. They just don't understand why it's not compliant. And they're not pointing fingers or trying to, like Rich said, it's a spirit of the thing. And just because somebody else has it, they may or may not know that it's in violation. And the city may or may not know, how or when it got there. And just for my own self-preservation, I don't have time. I just think how much time just one takes. I can't imagine. I mean, I remember the basketball hoop scenario. And so if there's a lot of them out there, maybe just don't tell me about them until we decide what approach we want to take.
Yeah. Jeffrey?
I guess, Mayor, I'm still trying to wrap my head around on the fire side. The trailer's blocking the fire truck more than the shed. And that's everywhere you go, a car or where I guess if it's got a will, it's not a structure. It just got to do a little more research and wrap my head. And I'd like to hear from the fire marshal, the fire chief, what is and isn't acceptable to park on the side of my house.
Good, Steve.
I was just gonna say, that's a minimal aspect of it. I mean, the fire department's gonna tell you that to fight the fire at your house, they're not gonna drive into your backyard. They're gonna tell you
Okay.
that.
Okay.
And so when we talk fire code, it's not so much access as it is separation. Your house catches on fire, we don't want your neighbor's house to catch on fire. Okay, so it's more the separation than it is an access requirement.
So,
Thanks.
so,
That's
so
good to know.
separation is probably a bigger piece than access. Be separation. Good. Okay. Good point. The separation.
I assumed it was access.
So the next step, if I can add, even when we address that, it would require a building permit and the engineering standards would need to be
Right.
looked at. And so maybe if the council's going to look at access, maybe the Jacksons want to provide me with kind of snow load, just so that they know if it's like, if it's a dead end street, no matter which one we go down. I hate to belabor or it's just a kind of a layered issue there. And so I'm not sure if it requires a building permit, if it passes a building permit as well, but I can do that unofficially with them with the information that they have. So
Before we
There
order,
was another structure several years ago, similar, people put up. It happened in their backyard at a big lot. I know Mark dealt with the structure and engineering. It came from a company out of the Midwest somewhere, and the engineering wasn't our snow load spec. So what happened with that was they just had to put some more support structure in the joists and rafters to help make it applicable for the snow load. So I know that's something that Mark's done in the past. That's not a reason to not allow it. But if it doesn't meet the snow load requirements engineering, then it's a matter of what can be done with that structure, with the bracing, to brace it, to add additional bracing to make it carry the snow load. And that again is to protect not necessarily the residents of the city, but protect the homeowners from that collapse on their own property. So that's what the engineering piece is. I've seen that happen before. That's a good aspect. Okay.
one thing we did do when I purchased this, I did look into that. So I just sent Ty the actual specs of this, and it's rated at 100 miles an hour for wind rating and 35 pounds per square foot for a snow load. So it meets everything else. So, I mean, again, yeah, did we go about it the right way? No, but me protecting my own property, these are things that I considered as well when I went in. So we can have that discussion, or I can give it to Ty, and then Mark can take a look at it as well. We're open to all of that.
Okay. Anything else from any of the council? Gary or Steve or Ty?
Just one comment as you go around. It's always good to look at everything as if the thing wasn't there, because then you detach it from people, situations, that type of thing, and just ask whether or not this is good for the community as a whole, or whether or not it's not. It's always easy to tie. Every single case has an exception. Every single ordinance can have an exception, but what you're looking at is this a good exception for the entire city? If you go to change the ordinance, that's my only caution there. So.
Yeah, and I appreciate that, Gary. Yeah, you need to look at every situation, and does it apply citywide rather than just in this one location? Sure, I appreciate that perspective, Gary, and thank you. And I would encourage the council to look at stuff. Yes, keep that in mind rather than this particular situation. How does that apply citywide or fire code wide, ordinance wide, setback wide, separation wide? All those pieces should play into your perception as you look at stuff. Steve, anything else you got for us?
No, I was just gonna say the same thing. Whenever you make an
Yeah.
approval, you have to realize then that every home in your city
Right.
could then do that.
Yep, that's the thing to consider for sure. I agree. Okay, anything else? Okay, since this was a discussion item only, on for discussion, there's not a motion needed. So do some thought and processes, and then we'll have this back up for discussion. The other thing Ty mentions for the council to think about is if you want the process he goes through in the future changed any. That's something you can talk about, think about as well. Okay, if there's nothing else there, we'll move from that item. Don't see anybody coming. Okay, we'll move to the next item, which is city reports and business. Item number 9. Ty, would you like to update us on some items there?
Yeah, I'll be brief. So our COVID update is, I have it. So I'm in my room for the next, I don't know how many days left I have, but 10 days in one room is way too long. And anyway, I'm just, the county had voted to start the process with the health department to see if we can go to green. So we're in the yellow. They just started that process. So the health department has a new epidemiologist that is trying to come up with criteria. I don't think that anybody's ever established what the target numbers or what the rate should be. And the county did just say, hey, we don't necessarily want to do this on a per capita basis because our population is so low. You know, we may never get there. So anyway, just to make you aware that process has started, and right now the governor's not taking any requests for green. In fact, Utah County or Provo and Orem had just went back to orange status. And so, but anyway, it's just something to consider. And I guess we will be consulted along the way as they look at going green. So that's good news. We don't have new Utopia numbers, but I would just mention that we worked really well with Utopia. They were really responsive after we got power reestablished. There were some lines that had been ripped off the poles and not necessarily causing an internet outage. So I drove around with them one night and pointed out some places where we knew our poles where we put up a new pole and they needed to migrate over to our pole, or that their lines were on the ground. And so they've been working on making sure everybody got reconnected. Caboose update. So it's been painted. I talked to Rachel today and she's going to find out what kind of warranty the paint has on it. They were supposed to prep, and the paint that they used was supposed to be specific for that use, so it won't rust through. It's supposed to be pretty industrial type paint. But what's happened is the property to our property to the east or northeast, that used to be grass. We started removing the grass. We didn't anticipate that we'd have any ability to sprinkle after the project. And I think we haven't got back to finishing that, but our original plan was to rock it so that it matched the rest of where the caboose is. But I don't think we visually anticipated that the caboose would be a different elevation than where the grass was. And we can't remove more dirt because it'll then be detrimental to the trees. So just any council input, if you'd like us to finish it out and rock it, we can put a pad up under the trees and a picnic table. Just make it weed free, maintenance free, or well, we still have an opportunity. We could redo the sprinklers and put sod back down. Either way, it'll look good. It's just because of that elevation difference. and before we keep going on it, and if you have any preferences on how you'd like to see it finished out. Oh, and then I would mention that the logos can't be put on for 30 days. So that paint takes 30 days to cure, and then they'll put the logos on it, if you were wondering about that. So.
Ty, have you received any comments from the community on the looks or how it's going to finish out? Any concern one way or the other?
Yeah, there's been a lot, there's not a lot, but there's been a few people with a lot of concern that it's just not going to turn out well. And our commitment is that no matter however it finishes out, that we will keep it maintained. I think we do a good job of maintaining our properties. But most of the concern was that one, it didn't have a fence behind the caboose. So I think we're adding fence behind it, but the main concern is just, I think, is it going to look nice? And then I have heard that where are people going to sit for the parade now that there's no grass? So
from a green perspective, have you had any comments or concerns about taking away green and not replacing it?
No, just that it looks I think the only thing I've heard about the green is it's a nice place to watch the parade. But I don't know that you can't fold up chairs and stuff like that. I think our original concept was weed free, maintenance free.
Well, just
And
tell them
the
now
rock's already there. Yeah, so.
it's a nicer place. Just sit on top of the caboose.
Yeah, a little shady.
Any input from the Historical Society on how they'd like to see it finished?
And they're just happy to have the caboose, and they don't really
Yeah.
claim the rest of that property as theirs. So I don't think they care one way or another on the grass portion.
I think my feeling is do what you think's best. I mean,
Awesome.
Yeah, I concur with that. We're gonna have to keep moving forward with what we've already committed to do and have started down that road.
Okay.
Well, living over here and listening to my neighbors' complaints, I would like to see sod put back in and have it grass again. That's what I'm hearing all the time. So
well, if we've heard that, that's maybe a consideration. I mean, that'd be a concern, is that, we've removed green, and there's certainly an element that would worry about that.
but that's the feedback I'm getting, and of course I live over here nearby, so I get quite an earful.
Okay. I'll evaluate kind of where we're at on what it would take, both directions, or what other groundwork it would take. And I don't know how bad off the sprinklers are to get them reconnected, but the ground's tore up, is a good time to redo the sprinklers if we're going to plan to do that. So
Dave's retired. He can go over and water and mow it in his spare time.
I can't even do my own yard.
Man, can I check out? I've got to run to an 8 o'clock. The viewing gets over at 8 o'clock.
Yep.
Thank you, Mayor.
Yeah,
we have
there's nothing else we have to necessarily vote on, so yeah, you can go. Okay, to my thoughts on that, yeah, Jeffrey said we had started on the road, we ought to finish it. I understand we got the caboose in and gonna have it decaled and look nice and gravel around it. And I guess in my mind, the rest of that section is we could do it whatever we deem at this point. Sometimes in the middle of a project, you can change your mind. So the question before us is, if you were in charge of the project personally, I guess we got just Dave and Tony left, and you had two options. One option would be to take and bring it down to the same level and put rock in it, just like the caboose is, that means you take those two trees, you're gonna have to go if you do that. You won't be able to leave those there if you bring that level down. That's one route. You gravel in and put weed pressure down, weed free, maintenance low, put a picnic table or two in there. That's one option. The other option would be to leave the trees there, go in there and take it. Some of them need to be reseeded. Some of the grass is going to come back already the way it is. It'll be a matter of seeing if we could connect the sprinkling system in that section that's left, and you have that grass, you have trees. You'd still put a picnic bench in that grass if you still want to do that, or picnic table. If you still want to do that. So those are a couple options. I guess there's something else out there to think about, but those are the two things I think that Ty's asking is as input on which direction you'd like to see it go. If you're in charge of the project, would you take the trees and lawn out, put gravel in there, or would you leave the gravel where it's at, leave the hill where it's at, and then just water it and mow it? Thoughts on that, David or Tony?
I think I just tipped my hat on that one just a minute ago, didn't I? I'm obviously in the camp of we reseeded or sod it. See, I was never under the understanding that we were going to tear that grass out in the first place. But I understood that we'd have the caboose there where it is, and that would slope up to that grassy area and the grass would remain there. Maybe that's my fault for assuming that, but that's how I saw it in my mind. That's what we were going to do. So
Perception's an awesome thing.
Yeah.
Sometimes we perceive things aren't the way somebody else perceives it.
that's very true.
But
But
what I
that's-
said, I can call somebody on Mars or on China and talk to them, but I can't communicate with you sitting in the same room with me. That's get the same idea. So anyway, at this point, Dave, what's your thoughts?
Yeah, just everything else being equal, the personal perception would be the option number 2, trees and grass. And I think maybe from more of a, technical or quantitative perspective, you can always take them out later if it made sense, where it's hard to put it back, especially mature trees.
Okay. So your thought would be to try and put grass back in, leave trees there.
Yeah, and I'm saying that based on just the green aspect. I mean, if it just didn't work because of some other aspect, even artistic, then let's consider it. But if everything else is equal, I think I would favor the grass and the trees.
And it would take more maintenance through the years, but is it what we prefer to have? That's the question.
Yeah.
Okay. Right.
When you say more maintenance, would it be more than we've already done in the past?
No, it's not more we've done in the past. It'll just be
so-
some maintenance.
Yeah, it'd be equal to or
It'd be more than a rock. It'd be more
Or-
maintenance than a rock.
yeah. But probably equal to or a little bit less than the past.
Denise, any thoughts you've got? Okay, all right.
Let's
Gary,
go home.
Ty, any other questions on or thoughts?
Nope, so because we didn't start with a master concept, so I apologize, Tony, that's kind of a figure it out as we go. And our guys were also not going to do the excavating work right there. But the contractor only had large equipment. So he was gonna excavate the entire thing, rock the entire thing all at the same time, but that's why it kind of became a little disjointed and not a smooth transition. But I'll do some work and see if we can't just get it put back. I think we will have to sod it. One of the other elements is it does lend itself to the health of the trees because there will be sprinklers and a water source. And so, I don't know how far down the roots need to go, but the grass and sprinklers will probably actually help the trees along the way as well. So.
Ty, do you see any anything fatal with either one or the first or second option? I mean, is either one obtainable?
Yeah, the only thing is just to make it look nice when it's done. That was the main goal. I think originally just to make it look more as a railroad theme is why the whole thing was going to be rocked. But of course, nobody had a sketch or anything. And so I thought my perception is that the caboose was going to sit a little higher up, and that I knew it was going to be dug down and sloped down, but I thought that the two, like it would transition to about the same level. And so now that the caboose sits way lower than the trees, I can see it differently. So, and a hill, we can slope that, and a hill with grass would be doable. So,
And maybe we should have had a better concept design on it. I was under the understanding, like I said, I always did see the caboose being lower with that slope up to the grass, and then in my mind, it was just going to remain grass, but anyway.
Yeah. Well, and it's all volunteer, so that's why we didn't do a whole
Yeah.
sketch plan, or we didn't, we're putting it together as people are able to help out and volunteer. So,
But I agree with you, just as long as it looks nice. It's gotta look nice.
Well, I think so far it's turning out good. It is looking nice. I've been impressed.
I was wondering about the decals, but you answered that question.
Okay.
30 days, is that what you said?
Yeah.
Okay, any other comments, thoughts on that?
So not on that, sorry.
Go ahead, anything else?
So yeah, just some personnel issues. So Jamie submitted his resignation. So we have a job posted for a water sewer supervisor. He got a job offer in Tooele, and I'll put him a lot closer to his wife's job, which is in Saratoga Springs. So he's given us a good 3 more weeks. He gave us some good notice, and so we're working on that transition, and looking forward to seeing if we can either recruit or promote one of our internal guys to that spot and then backfill it. So he can't leave till the 100 North is done.
Yeah. Ty, is there any concern? I know there's certifications on both ends that need to be, if we're without those, if they're concerned by the state?
Yep. So whoever we hire would have to have unrestricted water and sewer operator. Right now we have the 2 guys that we do have those, but whoever the main person in charge is has to hold that unrestricted license.
So if we didn't hire for, say, 6 weeks because we couldn't find anyone, we're still able to operate.
Yeah, we just transfer Chad's water certifications to the permit.
Well, that's a good move on your part to have those in place with, an idea that maybe a change could happen.
Good move or lucky. I can't tell sometimes. It's like when this power outage happened, if it was just Matt and I as the only people in the power department, Matt would have walked off the job and you guys would have fired me on day 1. So anyway, we'll call that one lucky.
That's fair. It'll be a good move on the next one then.
Yep. Okay. I think that's all I had, Mayor.
Anything else, Tony?
No, I don't think so.
Anything else, David?
Yeah, let me just, I know it's getting late, but just take a couple of minutes on the Planning Commission meeting and update the council on that. Tony, the mayor, Ty, and was anyone else involved in that from the council?
No.
I don't think there were 2 items that came up. The first was a proposed subdivision by Daryl Rupp and his wife. There was a public hearing portion of the Planning Commission, and it was quite involved. It was extensive. There were probably upwards of 10 to 15 neighbors that took time to respond to that. And almost without exception, there was a consensus among the neighbors that the building lots were too small, and they're asking for an R110. And if on their part, they would prefer an R120, a 20,000 square foot building area. There were some other concerns with safety, a single entrance, ingress and egress off of 400 West, lack of sidewalks on the Island Road, and so forth. And almost, without exception, they were aligned to saying we're having heartache with that. That said, the two items that related to that, the public hearing and the review and the discussion were tabled. And, I stepped out, Tony, for just a few minutes as they were making that decision. I assume it was just tabled until the next meeting. Was there any more discussion on that part of it?
Well,
Can I intervene
actually,
for a second? I just have to bring to your attention that this is not on the agenda. It is something that you're ultimately going to have to vote on. And it's something that will require a recommendation from the planning commission. And so you're kind of in a little bit of uncharted waters, but I'm just here to counsel you on that. So, sorry.
Yeah, in other words, don't make a decision right now.
Well, what could happen is a challenge would be based, a challenge could be based on the fact that we raised this in a meeting where the applicant did not have an opportunity to respond. And it wasn't on the agenda, it wasn't on any agenda item. And the council, it's an item that you will have to make a decision when you're discussing it. And so I just caution against that under Open Meetings Act. Sorry.
Yeah, fair enough, Gary, and well taken. But let me ask then, as part of my assignment with the council is to attend the planning commission, and understood that I was to be a liaison, if you will, between the council and the commission. Should that then be maybe just an agenda item, and then are we covered?
It could be.
In other words, if we're reporting on what happened in the meeting, which anyone could have attended, it was an open meeting for sure.
Yeah, if it's something that you will vote on, I would leave it for the date to make your report on the date. Like, for example, when Tony was the liaison, the item would come up on the agenda and Tony would be able to report what had happened in the meeting as the liaison on that particular item. And so the applicant had the opportunity of being there. He was invited to be there. So was the public. They were both invited to be there. If there are items that the planning commission is the final determiner on, for example, they are the final determiner on some subdivision applications and site plan reviews and that type of thing, certainly report, I would put an item on the agenda that says report regarding decisions of the planning commission, and you could report those items. But the only reason I cut you off was just because of the nature of the decision. You make both legislative and administrative decisions, and the legislative decisions are recommendations. You'll receive recommendations from the planning commission on those, and you'll have the opportunity of fully discussing them. And the applicant and the people will want to be here when you discuss those.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's the difference. Administrative decisions that they've made and you want to report to the council that they've made are great. You can report those all day long, but if you're going to have to ultimately decide on an issue, I would leave that until the day.
Okay.
Does that make sense, Dave? I didn't mean to.
No, I'm learning. Yeah,
Okay.
I'm learning for sure.
All right.
So Dave and Gary can back me up on this. When that final approval comes to the city council, that's when you can give us, or we will want you to give us as much information as you can, information that you've garnered from the planning commission meetings. When it's on our agenda for like a final acceptance of a zone change or a subdivision, right, Gary? Then you're free to.
That's great. That's exactly the reason you're there, is
give all the information you can.
So, so something like this where there is no decision is best just to not discuss it.
Until it comes to you
Yeah.
as a decision item for you guys.
Okay, yeah. I'm just trying to do a good job, man.
You are.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. It's a discussion we probably should have,
Yeah.
maybe
No,
with new council people, even older council people. I started with Morgan to spend 5 minutes at the beginning of each work meeting just to go over an item, and I promised to keep it at 5 minutes. And the first item I discussed with him was legislative and administrative decisions, and we got to legislative and talked about that, which is exactly the thing you're talking about. And that might be a good idea here, is to just spend 5 minutes, because I think this next year at the legislature, you're going to see a requirement that all elected and appointed officials go through 4 hours of land use training a year, counting the open meetings and the conflicts of interest. And so anyway, I didn't mean to cut you off, but I'm thinking
no,
we could be.
yeah, I appreciate your expertise and experience there, Gary. Absolutely.
Thanks.
Well, all of that said, let's move on.
Dave, you can report on the last two items. So they were
Yeah.
decision items. Go ahead and report on those.
Here's a decision item. Item number 3, well, there were 3 items on there, it looks like. Item number 3 was the historic design review and discussion of the 145th Commercial Street, design submitted by I think it's the Whitcliffs, but I'll hold it up. You can take a quick peek, but this was approved. You can see that right there for the 2 buildings. I think if I understood it right, they've taken 2 separate buildings, turned it into a single property, and plan on finishing the facade with that. Kind of an interesting note and a fun note, as they were taking some of it apart, they found a stucco on the right building that was done in the 1920s. They called it a Spanish revival, I think it was. And their plans are to leave that in place. So that was kind of fun. And what else? I think that
was it. That was it. Yeah. Thank you,
Yeah.
Dave. I appreciate your diligence, Dave. We do. Thank you for your diligence and reporting back on that. We all learn this legislation that we have at the state level, all the time changing stuff on us. So no problem, Dave. We'll learn as we go. You're okay.
Well, I'll just sleep during the next meeting.
You're all right.
I'll put my feet up now and take it easy.
No, we appreciate your knowledge. When it comes before us, we'll expect you and Tony to tell us the details on it, for sure.
I won't remember by then.
Anything else?
Mayor, do we need
Tony.
was there anything that from COG? I mean, we talked about the corridor preservation fund. As I understood it, we wanted that fund to build up to $400,000 before we did anything with it. Is that correct? And Ty and the representative from the county would be bringing those projects to us. Did I get that straight last night?
Yep.
Okay. And CDBG or the CIP, we have submitted our list. We're just waiting on the county to submit their list so we can bind the two and see how we want to rank and rate those projects.
Yep.
And I think that was about it. Well, a rather lengthy discussion on the rec board, but we won't get into that. So
Yeah. Okay. Any further items? Hi, Denise, Gary. Okay.
So, Ray, it seemed like on the agenda there was a discussion on signs, the Morgan City Code. Are we moving? We're not doing that
On what?
So
on the agenda.
on the last agenda,
On the original agenda for to discuss signs, but when we amended it, we took that item off.
so it was on the agenda for the meeting that we canceled.
September 8th.
The September 8th meeting, but basically it's, we don't allow people to put a sign up on a business sign on a property that's not with the business. And as I explored that code, I just wondered if that's how we want it, or so if you own 2 different properties and 2 different businesses, you can't put a sign up to advertise to your other business. And the sign has to be located with your business. And there's a scenario in town where, you know, a business owner owns property in commercial zone in several locations, but isn't allowed to put a sign up for one of the other businesses on a different side of town. And so I just talked with them about starting that discussion, but I think we came up with a different solution that would work in their situation. So
All right. Thank
that's
you.
what that was.
Anything else? Okay, I'll declare this meeting adjourned.
Hey, thank you.
Thank you for being here. I was gonna say, I really thanks, triple thanks to the city staff, our electrical guys and Ty, and they work 13, 18, 15, 19 hours a day. There for that weekend through Sundays and everything. And Ty commented multiple times on the office staff, how they were working to direct calls, direct people, put together spreadsheets to keep those total spots in line. We had our other workers, our other parks and sewer water people helping electrical guys and helping our office staff and our staff, including Ty, did an awesome job that week of the win. I want to publicly mention that.
You know, that was particularly impressive, Ty, that staff members would take other assignments that were outside of their own, you know, own realm. That is one way of making it happen. That was well done.
Thank you.
It was awesome. Okay.
They did
Thank
good.
you for all for time. Have a good night. We'll see you down the road.
Okay.
You know,
Good night.
Happy trails.
yeah. We need some music now. Huh?
Yeah.